So this is the escape room in the editor. And I wanted to start off with something really simple to split the players up. So the idea was that one player would have to interact with something like this wooden pallet on the ground, which is going to act like a button. One player would enter the trigger that's above it, and it would open up a hatch for the other player to go through, but only one player can go through it, because as soon as they step off this, it closes. And this was just a very simple way to split the players up. Once the second player gets through this hatch, they can then pull this lever, which, as well as unlocking this door and letting them into the second player's area, it also closes off the passage back permanently, even if player one reopened that hatch. And also opens the door at the beginning for player one to go through player one's section of the escape room. So I have these sort of debug buttons, because I'm editing this as just one person. Debug buttons to allow me to just cheat my way through and test out the next sections of the puzzle. So this is the first actual puzzle, and player one is presented with these different objects on shelves which they can click. And if you look at the door, you see that there's this eye with a coloured iris and a sort of different pupil shape, or unusual pupil shape. And this, if we go and look at what player two can see when they go through here, they are presented with this sort of grid. It's not the best lined up, but they're meant to figure out and communicate that this second row with the pink iris is the important row, and is the objects that player one needs to click in order to progress. The sort of interesting thing which I wanted to do here is that, although it's pretty simple from player two's vision, that it's a blue vase and then this jackal, a hat, and then a plant, from player one's perspective, there are multiple blue vases and multiple different jackals and multiple hats and multiple plants. So they have to try and communicate with each other to work out which of the different vases is the correct one, which of the jackals is the correct one, and eventually they'll work out that it's this one, and then this one, and then this one. And then this door will open, allowing player one to progress into this section, where they have this babushka doll and a hat, but that they can't interact with that. And they're presented with this Christmas tree. And from player one's perspective, that's all they can see. They don't get access to this button. It's just part of the debug buttons. And it's only by communicating with player two that player two can see this. They see baubles. And there's a sort of order to this, as well as this chest down here, which is a 3-digit code. And also this lever. And if they pull this lever, if they pull that lever there, then for player one, it will do what this button does here, and rotate the tree, allowing player one to count the baubles on the tree. And it's only by rotating it probably a couple of times that they'll be able to get a full 360 view of the tree and be able to count how many there are of each one. The totals are 5, 5, and 4. So when they enter that into this chest, player two gets this little hat. And when they've got that hat, this is where that babushka comes into effect, because hopefully player one will communicate to player two that they they've seen a hat and it was on top of a babushka doll, and that'll help player 2 realize that there's a babushka doll in their area as well, and that the hat needs to go on top of the babushka doll. This will open up the next section for player 1. If we have a look here, press this debug button, opens up this section, and the only thing new to player 1 here are these animal figurines. By clicking them, it does a sound for each of the animals. There's some jokey ones in there. And the objective of this puzzle is that I was thinking about how the players were going to communicate, and I wanted them to have to communicate animal sounds to each other and try and imitate the sounds. I thought this was a good way of doing it, because the answer is to select the sound that player 2 can hear from the speaker on their end. So when player 1 clicks the cat, if I put this in here, when player 1 clicks the cat, there's 3 different sounds that when it's rotated each time that it can play, but only one of those is the correct sound for the cat. And player 2 in this section will be hearing the correct sound. So player 2 will have to describe or imitate the sound to player 1 for player 1 to understand which is the correct sound, and they have to repeat that for each of these. Once they've done that, it opens up this next section. Opens up this next section where, just seeing what's going to happen here. Yeah. It's tricky to test this with just one player. But, okay, they'll be put into this section, and they pull this lever and it locks them in with all these snowmen. And they have this passcode here, and each snowman has a number on their chests, as well as different outfits and different weapons and different eyes. And if we look at player 2's side of things, they are... Let's just revert that. If we look at player 2's side of things, they're also presented with snowmen, and the players have to communicate with each other to work out the same snowmen that look the same. They'll have different numbers on each other. So the snowmen that player 2 can see, the numbers on their chests represent the order in which the digits are presented, whereas the numbers on the snowmen that player 1 can see represent the actual digits that need to be entered into the passcode. Into here. So they have to communicate with each other to work out the same looking snowmen in order to work out the passcode. It's fairly simple once they work it out, but describing the snowmen to each other is the communication that I wanted to happen there. The final bit, once they go through this end section, is just a very simple, there's a lever on either side, and they have to press the levers at the same time in order to move these 2 little babushka dolls next to each other, and then it will open the final door and get rid of these 2 barriers, allowing the players to finish the level. There are a couple of tricky things, like I couldn't find any way to restrict the audio, so for quite a while the audio that was playing over this side for this puzzle was also heard from over here by the other player, so they could just listen to each other's audio sources playing at the same time. There's no way to set a range on the audio sources that were playing over here so that I could stop the player over there from hearing them. So I just had to, set the volume scale to be quite low, but also I put this static noise. Just some static noise that happens in the middle when they play. If I just put the player back there, so you can listen as well as the cat noise. There's also a sort of static noise that plays over in the distance, and that stops them from hearing the audio that occurs on the other side. If I just move the player there and temporarily move these as if they were being clicked, then we can hear what player 2 will hear. See, they just hear the same audio. And there's some static noise coming up from over there because otherwise they'll hear the audio source that's playing for the other player. I think that's about it. It's quite a small escape room, so the main thing I wanted to do was just try and learn and test out a few ideas for making puzzles that were strictly for 2 players. Cool. All right.